Welcome to Brave Hearts, the podcast dedicated to honoring heroes, both human and animal. Personal heroes, national heroes, and unknown heroes. These courageous souls risk their lives so others can live, and it's our mission to give them the recognition and respect they truly deserve. These are the stories we want to tell. Stay tuned and be inspired.
Right, everybody, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed our last podcast and are excited for this next one.
Yes.
Yes, but before we get into our next story, we have some corrections from the last one. The last time I said that George Washington went to Barbados in 1951, I meant to say 1751. Misspoke there, a little bit 200 years off, but yes. So he went to Barbados in 1751.
Yes, and I was mispronouncing the Syrian bear's name. I kept saying Wojtek. His name is Wojtek, Wojtek. So, not war, Woj. So,
All right, this is going to be an awesome episode. Let's see.
I'm so excited to tell you this story, or to tell all of you this story. But before I dive into it, I want to let everyone know that my resources for this episode, I have 3 different resources. The first one is called Deadliest by Kalee Thompson. It's a phenomenal book that I highly recommend reading. There's a lot of detail that I'm not going to be able to share in this episode that is in that book. I also use the National Transportation Safety Board's report from the incident, as well as the United States Coast Guard report from the incident. So
Awesome.
we're just going to jump in, and it's going to be kind of a weird jump in. But what do you do for Easter, Michelle?
Usually just spend time as family, have ham and funeral potatoes, usually a little Easter egg hunt.
All fun
Talk about
things.
Jesus. Yeah, just kind of
Yeah.
go to church.
That's what a lot of people's Easters look like. Other people, it's just another day. But in Dutch Harbor, Alaska, it is the middle of the commercial fishing season. So a lot of them are out on fishing boats, fishing for fish. Imagine that.
Or fish. Wow.
So, Michelle, are you familiar with Dutch Harbor?
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit? Okay. Well, for those of our listeners who are not familiar with Dutch Harbor is located in the Aleutian Islands of Alaska. Specifically, it's located in the city called Unalaska. And it's known for its inherent beauty, snow-covered mountains, and lush green valleys in the summer. And it's home to 450 species of fish and invertebrates, 50 species of birds, and 25 different species of marine mammals. So,
Dang. Very
yeah.
diverse.
Very diverse. Yeah. A very beautiful area and presents a lot of opportunity to visitors and the locals to be able to see a lot of wonderful things.
Yeah. If it wasn't for the cold, I would love it there.
You don't really want to go live in Alaska?
I don't.
No, I would love to
No.
live in Alaska.
Too cold for me.
Too cold for you. That's okay. Well, the city's population is just over 4,000 people, and most of them are people who work either on fishing boats or crabbing boats or work in fish processing plants. And most people know the area for the TV series on Discovery Channel called Deadliest Catch.
Yeah, that's where I was thinking the name sounded familiar.
Yeah. So Deadliest Catch, for those of you who do not know what Deadliest Catch is, it's a TV series that follows small family crabbing boats in the based out of the Dutch Harbor area. It's super fun. It's really intense because it shows what fishing in the Bering Sea is like. And that's actually where our story takes place, is in the Bering Sea. The Bering Sea is considered the most deadly, or one of the most deadly oceans in the world because of extreme weather. And
Yeah.
it gets really cold. The water's temperature can be anywhere from negative 14 degrees to 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh,
Dang.
pretty
Yeah.
cold water. And the negative 14 degrees isn't freezing. That's like, it's still ocean. Like, it's not frozen.
Right. Because the water's still moving. It's just really cold.
Yeah.
I mean, even at the water's highest temperature, that is still like super cold.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when I did a polar plunge, I think the water was probably in like the 50s, I want to say. I can't
And it's like
imagine
a
what.
shock to the system. Like,
Yeah. You jump in and you like can't catch your breath and you're just shivering because your body's trying to keep you warm, and you're just adrenaline kicks in and you're kind of panicked. Like, I gotta get out of this water.
yeah.
And that's not even in negative 14-degree water.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I could not imagine.
Be very scary.
That would be absolutely terrifying. But despite the cold weather and not only the cold, but the snowstorms and the intense wind that hits the area, the Bering Sea is known for some of the richest fishing in the whole world. And yeah. So
The
that's where
fish
most
just
of our
like that water.
I guess they do, yeah. So a lot of our fish in grocery stores comes from the Bering Sea. So like
Oh,
yellow mackerel,
interesting.
tuna. Yeah. So pretty much all the fish products you could see in a grocery store probably comes from the Bering Sea.
Dang.
Because we only see all the fish that we eat generally in the grocery store, if you're not out fishing, then you kind of might forget that commercial fishing is the most dangerous or one of the most dangerous jobs in the whole world. And it's even considered, reported by the CDC, to be 28 times higher than national average for a professional rate fatality.
Oh, yeah, just the episodes that I've seen of the Deadliest Catch, all they have to be aware of and all the dangers that come from being on a ship at sea that's freezing, moving, like, the waves are huge. That doesn't surprise me with those numbers, like, it's those fishermen are brave men and women that go out there and do that.
They really are. And for those of you who haven't seen an episode of Deadliest Catch, you should probably go watch one to understand a little bit more about what we're talking about. But I can try to explain it. So these fishermen are facing extreme weathers like snow, blizzards, and even swells in the ocean, which are caused by wind from a faraway area that's moving waves away from where the wind is at. So these swells can be 20 feet high and they're just giant waves. There's a little bit longer period between them, but they're just big swells up and down in the ocean that causes these boats to move everywhere.
Yeah. To be
And
on, like,
then
a boat service being tossed back and forth with ice, like,
yeah, and then with the temperatures of the water, like water splashing up on the deck, and then the temperature of the water and the temperature of the air, it freezes on the deck, and then the deck is ice. And these men can
jeez,
easily slip off and fall into the water, which is so cold you
freezing.
could yeah, you're going to hypothermia within 15 minutes of being in the water without a protective suit on.
Dang.
It's definitely not my profession. So,
Yeah, for sure.
pass. But
Seasick,
right? Yeah, no, I don't get super motion sick, but I would be motion sick on that.
for
100%.
sure.
And many of these fishermen do it because they love it. And most of them get paid pretty well as well. Depending on the fishing season, a entry-level deckhand position can make around $30,000 for a season.
Dang. And how long's a season?
A season depends on when
Met?
quotas are met. Each species of fish has a harvest quote for each season. And once that quote is met, that's when the season is over, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
Mhm.
So it can be anywhere between a couple weeks to a couple months, just depending on how the fish are reproducing and if people are able to catch them or not.
Makes sense. Hey, that's not bad money, though.
Yeah, like $30,000, like let's say even in a month. I mean,
Yeah.
$30,000 is like
Or,
three
like, 2 or
times.
3 months, yeah, like and that's
Even
entry level. If you've done it for and you have experience
yeah, even if you do one season for over 6 months, you make $30,000. That's a pretty good
yeah.
salary. So $60,000 a year if you did two $30,000 seasons.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Well, a lot of these fishermen, as I mentioned, do it because they love it. And some of them even say it's in their blood. A lot of them are family fishers and they've carried on the tradition throughout the years. And that was some of the reasons for the members of the Alaska Ranger. The Alaska Ranger is a fishing trawler that was owned by the Fishing Company of Alaska, also known as the FCA. You'll hear me say that a couple times and I'm referring to that company. But this fishing trawler left Dutch Harbor on March 22nd, 2008, and the 47-man crew aboard were pushed to their limits as they experienced the real dangers of commercial fishing in the Bering Sea. So, as I mentioned, the crew left on March 22nd. They left around 12:10 p.m. and they were heading out to go fish for mackerel about 500 nautical miles away from Dutch Harbor. Sorry, 500 nautical miles west of Dutch Harbor. And about 14 hours later, Rodney Lundy, the vessel's assistant engineer, responded to a high water bilge alarm that was going off in the rudder room. When he arrived, he found the rudder room full of water, and he quickly made the decision to close the watertight door and inform the head engineer of the flooding. He informed the head engineer of the flooding and told the first mate, David Silvera, to sound the general alarm. And Silvera sounded the general alarm around 2:36 in the morning. This encouraged crew members to get out of their bunks and begin putting on their wetsuits or their Gumby suits, their protective suits to help them if they had to abandon ship. However, most of the crew was kind of sluggish because this had gone off before and they were like, well, I don't actually think anything's happening. But little did they know that water was quickly filling the rudder room. And about 10 minutes after the high water bilge alarm sounded, the crew was able to secure their dewatering pump and they went to go put it in the rudder room in an attempt to remove the water from the rudder room. However, the pump could not keep up with the amount of water rushing into the rudder room, and it was quickly rising. So the ship's captain, Peter Jacobson, sent out a mayday call at 2:46 a.m., so 10 minutes after the alarm went off. And the ship continued to take on water, and eventually began to lose their lights and even their power. But the power loss came later. But the captain at this point was in communication with the Coast Guard at Zodiac Island, and the Coast Guard was on their way. Now, there's a lot of crews and a lot of people to keep track of, so I'm going to try to make it simple. I will try to just refer to them as the crew, like the vessel that they're on, if that makes sense, or the
Yeah.
aircraft that they're on, so that we can keep better track of them. But there were a lot of people involved in this rescue. So the first crew we're going to talk about is the U.S. Coast Guard's HH-60 Jayhawk helicopter. This is a helicopter from the Coast Guard that is going to be essential in the rescue. They rescue, I think, about 13 people from the water, but that's a preview. But
Huh.
they are about 197 miles away from the time of the Mayday call. The Coast Guard cutter Monroe, which is a ship that is stationed out in the ocean to help fishing boats in the case of an accident. So they are about 130 nautical miles away from the accident site, and they're traveling at 30 knots. And on that ship, they also have another helicopter, and it's called the U.S. Coast Guard HH-65 Dolphin. So I'll just refer to that as the Dolphin, and I'll refer to the previous crew as the Jayhawk crew, just the name of their aircrafts. And they're traveling with the Monroe. They're not taking off yet because they don't have the fuel capacity to be able to fly to the site in time and be able to rescue the people. And then finally, there's also the Alaska Warrior, which is another FCA ship who is also moving out towards the same fishing area to go fish for mackerel as the Alaska Ranger is at this point.
Okay, so they were another fisher trawler, like another fisherman
Yeah,
vessel.
another fishing trawler. I think it was slightly smaller, if I remember correctly from my readings and my research, but they were heading out to go fish mackerel as well.
Okay.
Back to the Ranger crew. The Ranger crew members have now begun to pull on their survival suits, which they call Gumby suits because they make them look like a big kid. They look like footy pajamas, big orange footy pajamas.
That's
Yeah, it's
awesome.
pretty funny. But these suits are really cool because they're designed to keep water out so that people have a longer time in the Bering Sea or in really cold water, preventing them from hypothermia. So these suits, they're watertight, or they're supposed to be watertight, and they're supposed to seal around your face, and then they even have a flap that covers your mouth
Mhm.
so that only your eyes and your nose are showing, so help keep your body heat in the suit so that you're not getting hypothermia as quickly.
Right. Try to stay as warm as possible.
Yeah. And these suits are super important because hypothermia in these temperatures, I mentioned this briefly earlier, but hypothermia can set in about 15 minutes. And most people, if they're in the Bering Sea without one of these suits on, they can die with between 15 and 45 minutes, depending on the water temperature,
Yeah.
which is no bueno.
Yeah, and that's not even that long of a time. Like 15 minutes is not.
No, it's not. So yeah, and if you think about it, the Jayhawk crew, for example, they're currently 197 miles away, and it
Yeah.
takes them about 2 hours, an hour and a half to get to these men. If none of them had survival suits on, they would be all dead. So they're really important suits, even though they only e elongate the time before someone gets hypothermia. They provide really important insulation to allow them to have a chance to be rescued.
Right. Especially when it's like, okay, every minute's gonna start counting towards your life now. So any extra minute till help can arrive is probably beneficial.
Yeah, every minute you can get. If I was in that
Yeah.
freezing cold water, I would be counting the milliseconds.
Yeah.
I'm sure that getting in that water, whether you have a Gumby suit on or not, the second you're in that water, it feels like an eternity.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, so those are our 3 or 4 crews. We have the Jayhawk, the Monroe, the Dolphin, and the Alaska Warrior. So now that the Ranger crew has gotten these survival suits on, they're preparing to launch the first life rafts they launch is torn away in the aggressive storm. This storm, it has winds that is reaching up to 25 knots and creating 20-foot swells in the ocean. And the outdoor temperature is 12 degrees Fahrenheit and the water is 35 degrees Fahrenheit. So these men
Barely
just
above freezing. Yeah, that's
yeah, and these men just lost one of their life rafts. They only have 3, and they just lost one, and essentially, at this point in the storm, that life raft, all hope is gone for that life raft
right,
because
yeah, that one's
how are you gonna get to it now?
yeah.
Yeah. Well, for the last 2 life rafts, these were the 2 ways that men got off the ship and into the life rafts. Many of the men climbed down the Jacob's ladders, which are ladders that are designed to go from the ship's deck straight down into the raft. They don't go all the way down, but they go down enough that you should be able to get into the raft safely.
And aren't they kinda, like, not flimsy, if that's the right word, but, like, there's just, like, the wood planks and the rope. Like, it's not like they're a steady ladder on the way down from the side of the ship. Aren't they like, it's like the kid's toy Jacob ladder?
You're right. They're rope. They're
Yeah,
not sturdy. They're not like it's not a metal ladder that's secured to the boat. It's
right,
a
it's
rope
just
and wooden plank ladder that they climb down and it's swaying and banging
yes,
against.
yeah, moving with the wind and the rain and the ship.
Yeah. And as yeah, these 20-foot swells are coming, these men in the book it mentioned that one of these men was being slammed against the side of the boat because
Jeez.
I mean, it's the Jacob's ladder. It's nothing sturdy. It's just swinging back and forth. Some of the men, however, they are jumping from the deck of the ship, trying to land into the life raft. Their goal
Oh,
is to jump
jeez.
off into the life raft. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't think either option is great.
Yeah.
Personally, I have a really big fear. I just have a fear of deep water. These Gumby
Mm,
suits are also flotation devices, but since my cousin drowned when I was younger, I'm, like, kinda paralyzed of open water. I'm like, "Ugh."
yeah, yeah.
But so and as a kid, I hated heights too, so jumping, I'm like, "Uh-uh. No, thank
Man.
you."
Yeah, but I'm sure, like and some guys are probably going down the ladder, and so if you're just, like, at the end of the line, you're like, It's faster just to jump over and try to make
Yeah.
it than get to the side, climb down,
That's true, I didn't even think
wait for
about that.
everyone." Yeah.
Yeah, if they're waiting for everyone, I'm sure they were all anxious because
Oh,
they're
yeah.
trying to get off this boat, it's going down, they know it's going down. They were probably all trying to urgently get off the boat. I'm sure I would have been.
Oh, yeah. Me too.
Yeah. So some of these men did their jumps and even climbing down the Jacob's ladder were unsuccessful. Well, not unsuccessful. They got off the boat, but they didn't get in the raft.
Mm,
So some of these men are frantically trying to swim to these rafts as well to get out of the water. However, only 22 of the 47-man crew were able to make it into life raft safely, and the other 25 were floating in the 35-degree water for 2 or more hours. I cannot imagine.
yeah.
But at this point, the crew is risking severe hypothermia, as I have mentioned throughout this episode. And despite having their survival suits on, many of these suits actually weren't suitable for use. A lot of them mentioned later after the accident that their suits were not sealing properly around their heads. So water is coming in their suits around their heads and then going to the rest of their body. Some of them even had slits and cuts in there or tears in their suits, which was letting water in. So that's
Yeah.
going to increase the rate of hypothermia rather than decrease the rate of hypothermia.
Yeah. Because now you're just floating, not helping at all.
Yeah, it's not doing anything now because the water's having direct contact with your skin and cooling your body down. And a lot of these men begin to experience these symptoms of hypothermia, especially when these rescuers are out there with them. A lot of these men begin to have confusion and some slurred speech. They're difficult to keep awake. They're confused. They kind of have a memory loss. They have super low energy. And these rescuers are doing everything they can to try to keep them awake because the second that someone with hypothermia falls asleep, generally they go unconscious. And as hypothermia progresses, it can lead to heart failure and lung failure and even death,
Right.
which the rescuers want to avoid at this point. So these men, as I mentioned, they're all in the water. Well, not all of them in the water. 22 are in the rafts, 25 are in the water. And the Jayhawk crew arrives at the accident site at 5:05 in the morning, which is 4 hours before sunrise in the area. Because you remember, it's springtime, it's March in Alaska, and the sun is not high enough in the sky yet to be up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Right. So it's still dark and cold. Not even
Still
the sun
dark,
to help.
it's freezing cold. Yeah, the sun's not there to help warm them. It's also not there to help the rescuers find them.
Oh, yeah.
But luckily, Despite the sun not being there, these Gumby suits have a strobe light attached to them on the shoulder, and their Jayhawk crew doesn't see the Alaska Ranger at all. It's gone down completely, but they see dozens of flashing lights in the water. So this crew begins the most demanding work of their night, and that's hoisting men from the water into the aircraft to then be transported back to safety. So this crew consists of 4 people. Lieutenant Brian McLaughlin and Lieutenant Steve Bond are pilots, and Petty Officer Second Class O'Brien Hollow is the crew's rescue swimmer, and Petty Officer Second Class Robert DeBolt is the flight mechanic. He is assisting people from the booming lift onto the aircraft. And this crew lifts 13 men out of the water initially.
Dang.
Within the first hour or so that they're there, they lift 13 men out of the water into the helicopter, and then they have to make a crucial decision. The Alaska Warrior is closer to them than the Coast Guard Cutter Monroe. The Coast Guard Cutter Monroe is a bigger ship and therefore is more stable in the weather conditions in this massive storm that's happening. But the crew decides to go try to drop off the survivors to the Alaska Warrior because it's closer. It will save them time and fuel so then they can come back and help get more men out of the water.
Right.
So the pilots fly to the Alaska Warrior and they begin like evaluating if they're gonna lower these men down to the Alaska Warrior. But as the storm is continuing to rage on, they realize that it's not safe. The Warrior is not heavy enough to stay in a decent position. It's also not big enough for the helicopter to land. So each
Man,
man would have to be lowered down individually.
dang. And
So
that would take time.
and that takes time. So they decide to just go to the Coast Guard Cutter Monroe to take them to the Monroe. They fly to the Monroe, and then they do still have to lower each man individually because the Monroe is also not big enough for the Jayhawk to land.
Mm.
So the Jayhawk crew did not land on the Monroe, and they lowered each and every one of the survivors down. And once they got on the Monroe crew brought out survivor blankets. They helped the crew members take off all their wet clothes and their Gumby suits and wrap them in survivor blankets to help warm them. And then they also gave them microwaved potatoes to put in their armpits
Oh,
to help
oh,
bring their body temperature up.
I would never think of doing that, but that would make sense. Like potatoes will stay warm for a while. That's
Yeah.
very fit right in your little armpits.
Yeah, and yeah, perfect
That's
size, that fit right there. And then be
ingenious.
right? And because it's your armpits, it's thinner skin, better proximity. So your blood's circulating, it's pumping, and it's passing this warmth, and it's beginning to warm so that the rest of your body can warm up as well. So I thought it was pretty brilliant myself.
Yeah.
So Jayhawk crew drops off their survivors to the Coast Guard Cutter Monroe, and then they start heading back out to the accident site. While the Jayhawk crew had left and began dropping off their survivors, the Dolphin helicopter crew arrived on the scene, and they also began to boom people up into the aircraft. This is a much smaller helicopter than the Jayhawk, and it cannot fit as many survivors, but they begin booming as many as they can. And their plan actually was to even leave their rescue swimmer in the water with survivors to allow one more man to be brought onto the aircraft to be dropped off on the Monroe.
Oh man.
Yeah. So this crew consists of pilots Lieutenant Greg Gedemer and Lieutenant TJ Schmitz, as well as Petty Officer Second Class Al Musgraves, who's the flight mechanic, and Petty Officer Third Class Abram Heller as the rescue swimmer. So this crew begins working on pulling these men out of the water. As they're pulling the men out of the water, they get to one of their final rescues, and something devastating happens. They came to Byron Carrillo, and Heller was lowered down to Carrillo. Byron Carrillo is from California, and this was his first trip on any fishing trawler. And his cousin Julio Morales had also been on the ship with him, and he had helped him secure this job with the FCA. But Byron, now in the water with a Gumby suit that had excess water in it because it had not sealed properly, was undergoing severe effects of hypothermia. He was extremely confused. At times, Heller even felt like Byron was fighting him for his own rescue.
No.
Really sad that he knew what was going on, but like was kind of confused enough to not be able to follow directions.
Right. Get that
So
fight and flight mode going, and he's just
yeah, his
trying to.
adrenaline's pumping. I'm sure that like once Heller came over to him too, he was like, oh, like someone's here for me, like, "Oh my goodness." His
Yeah.
adrenaline, like, it started going more, I'm sure. But Byron finally was able to follow directions enough that Heller could get him situated, and Musgraves, above them in the aircraft, saw an opportunity that Byron seemed to be in a good position to lift him into the air in the rescue basket. This rescue basket that the crew is using is a big rigid steel frame with 2 buoys on the side to prevent it from sinking in these big swells that are happening in the ocean so that it stays with the rescue swimmer and the survivor. And generally, survivors sit up in this basket to help secure them with straps, but then also to allow the rescue of multiple survivors at once. However, the crew decided to forego using the straps because it would increase the time they needed to spend with each survivor to about 10 to 15 minutes per person. And they
Oh,
didn't have
man.
10 to 15 minutes per person.
No.
No, this
When you have
is
that
like
many
an
people in the water that's already been there for 3 hours, like
yeah, and only 13 people right now are out with the Jayhawk crew. So they don't have time is not unlimited here. Time is of the essence. This is an urgent matter and they have to get people out of the water. So they decided to forego that. And as Musgraves is booming Byron up, Byron all of a sudden his legs are out of the basket. And then he slips and he's holding onto the basket. His body is completely over the side. And
oh,
Musgraves,
man.
yeah, I would be terrified. I wouldn't know what to do in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Musgraves booms this basket as close as he can to the helicopter, and then he notices that Byron seems to be holding a lot of water weight from the water rushing into his suit because it wasn't sealed properly. So Musgraves turned around to grab his knife so that he could slit his suit to let all the water out, to pull him out into the helicopter. But as soon as Musgraves turns, Byron slips and he
Oh,
falls
no.
down to the water. And 40 feet below him, Musgraves looks and he thinks he sees Byron waving for a minute. And then he realizes that Byron is, in fact, actually face down in the water, making no attempts to right himself.
No.
So at this point, the entire crew decided that it was more pertinent that they got other people out of the water who had the ability to right themselves, were able to keep their heads out of the water because they had a higher chance of living.
Man, the tough choices that, people have to make when they have to do triage and things like that. That's decisions that they have to make.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's a decision that they have lived with for the rest of their lives because unfortunately, even though our heroes want to save everyone, they cannot always save everyone.
Right. And if they could reach more people that'll survive, it's a sad choice, but you have to that's the decisions you have to make.
Yeah. It is really unfortunate because Byron was a person too, and he had a
Yeah.
family and he had dreams and hopes and passions, and I wish it was a decision that people didn't have to make.
Right.
Unfortunately, it is. But the crew continued on and they continued to boom several more survivors into the helicopter. And then on their final rescue, Heller asked them to drop the spare life raft. Just kind of, well, seriously. He was asking seriously. And his crew members were like, well, we're not going to leave you with the survivors without a raft. Like, do you think we're stupid? Like, we're
Yeah.
not going to leave you without a raft. So they lower Heller down back to the water. He gets one more person set up in the basket, they boom that person up, and then they go to the Coast Guard cutter Monroe and leave Heller with 3 more survivors that he gets out of the water into this life raft from the helicopter to get them out of the
Oh,
water.
man.
And then Heller begins this fight, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, to try to keep these men awake, because the second they fall asleep, then he has a much more serious situation on his hands.
Yeah. A lot harder to wake them up if they have hypothermia then.
A lot harder. So Heller begins that quest, and the Alaska Warrior arrives on scene. The Alaska Warrior, as I mentioned, is the other fishing trawler that is the sister ship to the Alaska Ranger, and they arrive on scene and they begin helping pull fishermen out of the water as well. Initially, they try to use the life ring from the ship,
Mm,
like the flotation life ring that you see in
right.
movies that they throw out. Like those are real
Yeah.
things. Those aren't just decorations at the pool.
Yeah. At the
They
pool,
use those
yes.
for real. They begin trying to throw that out to try to get the men to catch on to it, and then their plan is to just pull them up. But there are these really sharp drain shafts open for the fish processing part of the ship
Oh,
that if
yeah.
they hit that or if the raft hits that with these big swells, it's gonna pop the raft and they're all gonna end up in the water again.
Right.
So eventually the Alaska Warrior turns, so it's not the pipes from the fish processing plant aren't pointing towards the raft. And then they decide to use their crane, the crane on the ship, to hoist the men up out of the raft onto the deck of the boat.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
I
what
thought that
the
was
hoist
really
that they'd
cool.
usually use to lift the nets, the fishing nets up?
Yes, uh-huh, yeah, the crane they used to for the fishing nets, they used to lift the men out of the water one by one, or
Man.
out of this life raft.
Right. Hold on.
Yeah, oh my goodness, I think I would be holding on for dear life. I would have
Oh god.
my fingers I would be, like, white knuckling it.
Oh yeah.
I'd be
Holding
so
it
scared.
arms and legs.
Yeah, like, wrapping my arms and legs around it, like, "Please," and I'm sure it's icy, so I'm sure it's
Yeah.
slick, so
Full of fish
but
oils.
yeah, yeah, your favorite smell.
Ugh.
You would just thrive in this scenario, Michelle. Cold
They-
fish.
Yeah, two favorite things.
But so this crew ends up pulling 12 people out of this raft. This raft had 12 people on it, and they get them survivor blankets and microwave potatoes as well to warm them up
Is
after they
that
get.
like common knowledge in like the fishing? I mean, did like they say like, "Hey, this is what you need to do," or is it like everyone's like, "Ah, no, they're cold. Get the potatoes." Like,
I
I've
have no
never heard
idea.
or thought of that, but it just seems like everyone's like, "No, this is like what you do."
Yeah, no, I had no idea either, but it makes a lot of sense thinking about it.
Yeah, no, it's genius, but I just never would have thought.
Yeah. Me neither.
Hmm.
So they did the same thing as the Monroe did to help them warm themselves back up. And on each of these boats, the men begin to be really welcomed by these crew members. So on the Alaska Warrior, these men that are part of the Warrior crew are giving the Ranger members items from their own personal stashes or their own clothes to help them get warm, get them out of their wet clothes. And they're just being really hospitable and really kind and their own heroes in different ways. Because I'm sure those little things, even like a candy bar that they had in their personal
Right,
stash,
yeah.
meant everything to those men in those moments.
Yeah, just got the shivers, yeah, that's
I know. How sweet is that? I just thought that was so
right.
wonderful that oftentimes the terrible things of society and of mankind are highlighted, but I believe most people are good. As Luke
Yeah.
Bryan has said,
Yeah!
I believe most people are good.
Right?
So
Agreed.
as these men are continuing to warm up on all the vessels and the aircrafts, but especially the Alaska Warrior crew, after the Alaska Warrior crew pulls these 12 men out of the raft and those men are getting warmed up, they begin finding a couple bodies and they
Oh.
begin pulling these bodies out of the water. And the Alaska Warrior crew pulled two bodies out of the water. First, they pulled out Captain Pete Jacobson, and second, they pulled out Byron Carrillo, the fish processor that we mentioned who had fallen
Mm,
from the dolphin's doorway.
basket.
Yeah, from the basket. But one of the crew members, when Carrillo was brought in, immediately began CPR on Carrillo because the previous day he had been teasing Carrillo and messing around with him because Carrillo was brand new to the ship and he did not know what kind of fish they were supposed to be processing, what fish to be thrown back, what was the prohibited species. He was just really struggling and he took him under his wing and was
Mm.
helping him out. So he began CPR in Carrillo, and he did not stop until the first mate ordered him to stop.
Oh, that would be so hard. Like, I mean, to see anyone, I'm sure they had a hard time for everyone, but to like, okay, this guy, it's his first time out here. He kind of probably felt like, oh, I'm gonna be his like, protector type of thing, show him the ropes, and then this horrible event happens.
Yeah. Like, what a terrible thing to see and experience.
Yeah.
Like, if I was in his shoes and I would kind of feel like I was his mentor, like him under my wing and being like, oh, let me show you how to do this. Like, this is what you're looking for. This is what you don't want. And then the next day to see that they had died.
Yeah. And feeling helpless, like all he could do and all he knew what to do is like, okay, I'm gonna try CPR.
Mhm. Yeah.
So sad.
So sad. On the Monroe ship, similar things were going on. The crew was also allowing or giving the Ranger crew members their own treat stashes, and they were even opening up. They had a Coast Guard like swag store, not a swag store, but like I don't know. They had a place on the ship where Coast Guard members could purchase new clothes
Oh,
that were
okay.
like Coast Guard labeled. Yeah, so they had like
Mhm.
Coast Guard logos on it and stuff. And the crew opened up that shop to the Ranger crew members so that they could just go grab whatever they needed so that they
Oh,
could feel welcome and at home.
right, and get warm and because everything
Mhm.
they had is lost now. It's at the
Yeah,
bottom of the sea,
everything
like,
is gone. Yeah. all their treats that they brought, all their clothes, their games,
Yeah, personal
everything.
items, everything, just
Yeah. And on the Monroe, they allowed not allowed, but they kept the Alaska Ranger crew on what they called the rec deck, the recreation deck. So it was like where they had movies and TVs. And so the crew hung out up there and they watched movies, just trying to comprehend everything that had happened.
right, decompress and
Yeah.
man.
And warm up. I'm sure some of them are
Yeah.
still cold. I mean,
Oh,
their
yeah.
body temperatures may be up to a functional point, but they're still I'm sure they're still freezing.
Oh, yeah.
But the following day, Monday, the 24th of March, the captain of the Monroe, Captain Lloyd, informed the crew members of the Ranger that there had been 4 bodies pulled out of the water. Byron Carrillo, Captain Pete Jacobson, first mate David Silvera, and chief engineer Daniel Cook. These men were absolutely distraught that these 4 men had been lost because they were their friends and their family.
Yeah. And, like, 3 of them sounds like they were, like, the leaders, like, the captain and the first mate and the engineer, like, those are probably, like, their bosses.
Yeah. And some of them had actually just recently stepped into this role. Captain P actually had stepped into this role. This was his first captain assignment on the Alaska Ranger.
Oh,
He had previously worked as the first mate, and because the previous captain had left the company or was fired, there's mixed reports about that. But so Pete Jacobson was there for his first assignment as captain, and he
man.
unfortunately died in the accident.
Wow.
Additionally, the ship's fishmaster, who was a Japanese man named Satoshi Kono, who he was responsible for taking the ship to the best fishing grounds in the area. He was still missing.
Oh.
So, and he's still missing to this day. They did call off the
Oh, they
search
never
though.
found him.
No, they never found him. They called off the search because there was no way that he had survived in the Bering Sea for 40 hours.
Yeah.
Way too long, way too cold.
Yeah.
So they did call off that search. But all in all, the members of the Jayhawk, Dolphin, Monroe, and the Alaska Warrior saved 42 of the 47 crew members, and their bravery is remembered as the largest Coast Guard rescue in history.
Wow. That's incredible. That is a lot of people in the water for a long time and a lot of rescues.
Yeah. These crews were out there for hours rescuing men, getting them out of the
Yeah,
water.
man.
A lot of people wondered why the ship sank, and it's speculated that the ship sank because some rivets gave way in the rudder room. Because the ship was so old, it was currently undergoing millions of dollars of safety improvements, but the safety improvements had not been all completed yet. But
Hmm.
the ship wasn't deemed unsafe to go out to sea. So that's why the ship went out still. It just wasn't a brand new, super safe, like board approved ship, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
Well, do you have any questions, Michelle?
I'm trying to think. So, like, now do you know, like, I'm sure they've had, like, different regulations because if the suits weren't, like, maintained properly, like, that's really bad. Who knows what could have happened if everyone had the correct gear, you
Yeah,
know?
for sure. There's been a lot of things that have been done. Unfortunately, this rescue didn't necessarily change what they were already trying to implement. It more just reinforced what the Coast Guard was
Mm,
trying to implement. The Coast Guard at this time, or just recently, had begun a program to help improve the safety of these old fishing trawlers and other commercial fishing boats that could not be considered approved. And each of these fishing trawlers also federally has to have an observer on the boat. The observer on the boat, I'm blanking on her name, but she was a federal employee and she had a checklist that she had to go through each time before she got on a boat to determine whether it was safe or not for her to get on. And the list consisted of a okay list, like if the ship doesn't have these or meet these requirements, then she can still get on. But if the ship doesn't meet a no-go list, then anything on that no-go list, if she checks any of them, she's not supposed to get on the ship. So when she had gone through her checklist, there was nothing on the no-go list that prevented her from getting on the ship.
gotcha.
So that was also in question, like, why is it safe or how important are the things on this other checklist that could have prevented a lot of things? For example, the watertight door at the rudder room that Rodney Lund closed or tried to close was actually not watertight and it did
Mm,
not seal. so it didn't prevent water from moving farther into the ship.
Right.
So that was one of the things that was considered and discussed in the reports with the NTSB, which is the National Transportation Safety Board. They review all major shipwrecks and aircraft incidents and major car accidents. That was something that they brought up as well as the Coast Guard in their report.
It's like, man, they had I mean, I'm sure there's always things that can get improved on, but it's like things were there things overlooked, or was it just like these were some bad circumstances between like the storm? Did they hit something? Like,
And unfortunately, too, this was also mentioned in the book, and I'm glad you brought this question up. A lot of these men, they had been told what to do in an emergency situation on the boat, but they had not done any actual drills. So they were given their
oh,
survival suits. Yeah, so they were given their survival suits and say, put these on. And they didn't actually pull them out and put them on because they labeled it as too much of a hassle to pull the suits out and then have to fold them back up and put them in the bag.
hmm. So it's like, huh, maybe like maybe practicing is kind of important and drilling emergency scenarios.
Which and I can understand that too, like, getting kind of complacent with some of those things, it's easy to do,
Mhm.
and I'm not pointing any fingers at them, but I do think
No.
it would have been very beneficial if some of these men like Byron Carrillo, who had never been on a fishing trawler before, to at least have tried to put it on once.
Right.
Instead of frantically putting it on in the moment and not knowing how to correctly seal his suit so that he could prevent water from getting into the suit.
Right. And then like if they were to put them on and be like, "Oh, this one has a rip in it. It needs to be replaced."
Exactly. They could have identified those issues before they left the harbor instead of not having the issue identified and then having men in the water with holes in their suits.
Right. So, I mean, this was like crazy, but hopefully this like kind of helped enforce it to like all those other ships
Yeah.
and
And I'm
stuff out
sure it
there to like
has. Yeah, definitely. Well, any other comments or questions from you?
just how grateful I am of people who are willing to risk their lives. There's the people that risk their lives to get the seafood, and then the people, the Coast Guard and the other crew members that are like, risking their lives to save people. Like,
Yeah,
and that's
they're
what this
risking
podcast is for to like honor the heroes. And so sometimes I think the Coast Guard gets forgotten. But like,
I think they do too.
yeah, shout out to the movie The Guardian. Great movie.
That's a great movie.
Yeah, but just, like, how hard, like, I could never just the endurance and the mental load and stuff to be a rescue swimmer. They're true heroes out there.
They really are. They really are. Okay, well, should we jump into our categories for this episode
We
real quick?
shall.
Perfect. Okay, I'll go first.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
what is your favorite movie that is featured out at sea? Not featured, but, like, based out at sea.
I chose 3 because I can't just
Do it.
choose 1. Okay, so my first one is Pirates of the Caribbean, mainly the first one. One of my favorite
Mm.
movies, love the Pirates of the Caribbean. So that was my first one. And then second one is Down Periscope. I think that's one of the funniest movies and it's stupid, but it's funny. Love that movie. And then I also chose Shark Tale, and I quote that one fairly often. It's an animated movie, but it is so funny. I love that movie.
It's a great movie. Those are really good movies, I like those ones. Shark Tale is one of my most memorable movies as a child.
Yeah.
Specifically that quote, "Mom
Yeah.
said it's not okay to
Oh,
hit."
he's like, "It's a
"Well,
mom's not
mom's
here."
not here." Yeah. Okay, well,
So funny.
I decided to pick a couple too. My
Let's
first one
hear
is
'em.
Finding Nemo.
Love
I
Finding
love that
Nemo.
movie. I touched the butt.
I
I love
touched
that
the
movie.
butt.
It's just so well done, even though it's an
It is so good.
animated film. I mean, I don't have anything against an animated film, not even though. I guess it's just like a good feel-good movie, and it's always one that
Yeah,
I could sit down and watch again.
yeah. And just the colors and the sound of the ocean while it's going, like, it's just a good
One of my other favorites is Poseidon,
Oh, yeah.
the movie about the cruise ship.
Yeah, and then that one goes down, right?
That one goes down. Yeah, and they have to escape from the cruise ship.
I've seen that, like, once or twice, but I remember it was really good that I liked it.
I watched it once, and then a few weeks later, one of my favorite TV shows, 911, did, like,
Mhm.
an exact replica, but it was the 911 characters, and I was like, "Huh."
Like, "Wait a
I'm like, "This is
second."
Poseidon." I thought it was funny. And then my final honorable mention is Life of Pi.
Oh, I've actually never seen that movie.
I really love it. I actually like the book a little bit more, I would say, but it's a really good movie.
Oh, yeah, I need to watch that one. I've never seen it.
I enjoy it a lot. Yeah. Go for it. Let's hear
All
what you've
right.
got.
So the next category I did, it's hero's choice, like the would you rathers. So here we go. Would you rather be stuck on a deserted island or on a raft out at sea?
Deserted island, 100%. I
Agreed.
wanna be able to drink water. I don't wanna be surrounded by water that I can't drink. I think I would go insane.
Yeah. And you'll have a lot more resources for living on a deserted island.
Yeah.
I would feel. I guess I mean it depends on the island, but for the most part, the island's gonna have like trees or
Mhm.
something that you can work with
Some
or
sort of
shelter and
shelter.
stuff.
You can avoid the
Yeah.
sun.
Yeah. Probably some sort of food.
Mhm.
Yeah. I would take the deserted island. Okay. Would you rather jump from a helicopter to rescue someone or take a boat, like a speedboat?
Taking the speedboat. I thought about that one a little bit longer too over, like, yesterday and stuff.
Yeah.
No,
No, you're like, nope, still speedboat.
still a speedboat.
See, I still think I'd rather jump from the helicopter.
I wouldn't mind being boomed, like, being a rescue swimmer, like, with the Coast Guard and being boomed down, I'd do
Mhm.
it. If I have to jump into the ocean to go get my person, they can count me out.
You're like, "Eh,
Sorry, I'm not coming
no."
for you.
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, I think I could do it. I say that not being on a helicopter over water, but, I would like to think that I could do that, that I would do that.
Okay. I would like to think that, like, I could maybe develop the courage to do it, but, like, blatantly, if you just ask me right now, I'm gonna say no.
You're like, "Nope, taking the boat."
Sorry.
Alright, so now, would you rather have to rescue 10 ferrets from a sinking ship, or would you rather have to transport 5 hungry badgers in a helicopter?
Okay, so I've actually been thinking about this one a little bit,
Right.
but I still think I'd pick the Badgers, but another reason I think that the Badgers are good is, 1, I don't like the way ferrets smell, and 2, ferrets are
Fair enough.
really agile.
Yeah.
They're really good at getting out of tight spaces. I don't know if they can swim, but I'm sure that they could figure out a way out of a ship.
Fair enough, yeah. Yeah, they're weasels, I mean,
I mean, I'm not saying that the ferrets should drown. I don't want them to drown. No. Yeah, but I think ferrets are cool. I kinda want one for a
yeah.
pet, but they stink.
Yeah, they do. I think they're cool.
So,
Like, I would go pet a ferret, but I don't think I'd
yeah.
own a ferret.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think it'd be a lot easier to transport badgers.
'Cause they're probably, like, what, in some sort of transport cage on a helicopter?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would hope so.
yeah, for the sake of this made up question, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, 'cause why else would badgers be on a
Right,
helicopter?
I mean, it would make it more difficult if they weren't in cages, though.
It were, and I get it were. It
It
would.
were.
But I guess that, like, brings the question to the ferrets too. Are the ferrets just out and about, or are they in a cage?
Yep, out and about, just swimming in the ocean. Gather them
Yeah,
up,
no,
make a coat.
I'm taking the badgers.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so now this one's kind of a lose-lose situation for this next one.
Shoot.
Would you rather be stung by a jellyfish and not you're not gonna die, but it's gonna hurt. You're stung by a jellyfish, lay on you for 5 seconds, or would you rather be shocked by an electric eel?
I'm choosing the jellyfish.
Really?
Mhm. I don't know why, I mean, they're both not great options, but I think I don't know. They could both be cool stories.
Indeed.
But also, if I got a scar, I think I'd want the jellyfish scar.
That should be like, do you know how I got this scar? It's a
Kill a man with
jellyfish.
this thumb.
Yeah. See, I think I'd go with the electric eel though, because I think jellyfish would like hurt so bad and like for a while afterwards. Like an electric eel, like you get zapped, you're done. Like
That's true, and it's just one body,
so.
it's not like multiple tentacles.
Right, like wrapping around your leg or arm or wherever, like, I think I'd go with the electric eel.
You might have persuaded me. I still think it would be cool to have a jellyfish scar,
Oh, yeah, for sure, yeah.
but I think you persuaded me. I think I'd prefer to get shocked by the electric eel.
Yeah, because that jellyfish, like and then the tentacles just, like, zap you for a while, especially if you
And
didn't get a
they
scar.
Yeah, well, and they, like I don't know if this is true for all jellyfish, but I remember listening to a Tooth and Claw episode, and it talked about how if you move the tentacles, then something with the physiology, like, they don't release whatever they release until you move them.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
So if you're moving around trying to get it off and then it's re-grabbing, then it's, like, re-stinging you.
free stinging, yeah. I would just imagine that would not be fun.
So I'm going with the eel. You convinced me.
You're welcome. Now, would you rather have to swim? Okay, you're in a race. Would you rather have to swim without your arms or without your legs?
Dude, I'm choosing the arms still, 100%. I don't want my arms
So
because I can just back float and
that's yeah, like you said, okay, so that's like that kind of like changed my mind a little bit to be honest with you. Cause at first I was like, oh, I would for sure not do legs because you could tread and then swim. Like I just pictured me trying to like mermaid swim or dolphin swim. I'm like, that would be so hard. But like, yeah, if you don't have arms, you could just back float. So that
honestly,
is
I have arms and I just black back float.
no, like that's honestly how I swim. I don't know. Yeah, wow. No, that's I mean, but if I were in a race, I think I would swim with my arms. But if I was like stranded and I had to choose which one to use, I think I would go with you and use my
Okay.
legs. Okay.
I
Okay.
think I could deal with that.
Yeah.
I just feel like my legs are much stronger than my arms. So I think if I was in a
Mm,
race, using my legs would give me more power
that's true.
and would probably get me to go faster than if I just used my arms.
Okay, next time you're down here, we're gonna have a race. Me using
Yeah,
my
let's do it.
arms, you using your legs. See
Yeah.
who wins.
Well, and if you think about it too, if we're racing, like in this hypothetical situation, if you have arms and no legs, and I have legs and no arms, I could use
It's
flippers.
true. I can get like webbed hand.
There you go. Anyway,
Okay, next time we're at a pool together. We're
next
racing.
time, yeah. Yeah, we are.
So what's your next category?
Okay, my next category is your favorite memory fishing.
Favorite memory fishing. Okay, so this one I don't remember how old I was. Probably like, I don't know, maybe 10, 12. And we went somewhere by Pace in Arizona. And we were gonna just go camp and kind of go fishing for a little bit. And they were supposed to restock the streams and the rivers. You know, like Arizona Game and Fish, they dump a bunch of fish and they all like swim down. So either they hadn't got to where we were yet, or they didn't actually restock them. So we're like, we really wanted to catch a fish. You know, we were gonna eat it for dinner. And in this little spot where like the kind of like curd is a little deeper part, we see this one rainbow trout. We're like, oh, we're gonna get it. So there, me and my siblings were trying to fish, and we couldn't get it. Like we kept on fishing all different types of bait. It wasn't taking anything. It could see us. It was looking at us like, yeah, no, I'm not stupid. So we're like, dang it. So we set up a trout line, and we are gonna go check it later. So we went walking and come back, and we see bear scat by the little pond thing and scratch marks on the rock that weren't there before. So we're like, "Oh, man, there's a bear after this too." Like there's this one, the bear's hungry too. It wants this fish. So we tried and we were finally able to catch this rainbow trout, and we felt like we were the coolest people ever because we fought a bear for the
For the
fish and we
last
took it
fish.
home. Yeah, for the last fish. We cooked it up, and I don't like seafood at all, but this was like, okay, I worked for this fresh caught rainbow trout. We cooked it on the campfire. It wasn't that bad. So there, helped
There you
gut
go.
it, cooked it up, and I ate some, which is
Wow.
actually, yeah, that's big for me.
I'm
So
actually shocked that you ate some and you liked it.
right? Yeah. And but like I said, it
Okay,
wasn't
not liked
that
it, but
bad.
it wasn't sorry, correction. It wasn't that bad.
Still very surprising coming from me because I am a very picky eater and I do not like seafood. So
No, you do not. You don't even like the smell. You
no,
can't stand the smell.
I can't even stand the canned chicken because it smells too much like tuna.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I can't even eat the canned chicken. The texture, the smell, it's I you can't convince me it's
Makes you
not
think of
actually
tuna.
tuna. Yeah,
That's funny.
yeah.
I'm gonna make
Won't eat
something
it.
with canned chicken once and see if you're gonna eat it.
I'd be
Like,
like,
when I move down to Arizona again,
yeah.
I'm gonna and we do our, like, Sunday dinners together, I'm gonna make something one time.
You could see if I actually can taste the difference.
I will. Watch your back. Just kidding.
I'm gonna, like, second guess every food you give me now.
I'm gonna bring you steak and you're gonna be like, "This is canned chicken." You can smell it. That's funny.
What's your best memory?
My favorite memory of fishing was when I don't know how old I was, but my family went with some family friends down to Schofield Reservoir in Utah, and we were fishing and crawdadding and just having a great time. My line was out in the water, and then I got a bite, and I went over there and I start reeling it in. And this is like a hard fight. Like I'm a little girl, but like
Oh,
this is a
cute little
hard fight.
Elizabeth reeling it in.
like frantically turning my reel, trying to reel this fish in. And eventually my dad starts helping me. Was it my dad or was it my family friend? I can remember. One of the adult men started helping me and then handed it back to me. And then my dad's friend, as I'm continuing to reel this fish in, yells across the lake, reel it in like a mad woman. And I'm like, I'm trying to reel it in. Finally, I get this fish close enough that my dad can grab it with the net. He pulls it out of the water and takes the hook out of its mouth. And it's a tiger trout, and it's about 24 inches long. It's the length of my dad's forearm.
Dang.
This is a big fish.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it was the first fish I remember ever catching. I think it was my first fish that I ever caught, but I'm not sure.
Oh, fun. Oh, and honorable mention is on my mission, my church mission in Wisconsin. I went ice fishing out on the Mississippi and walked out there with our skirts and met some ice fishermen, and they showed us how to fish. And I caught a bluegill.
That's
So
fun.
yeah, so I got to
That's
go ice
cool.
fishing on the Mississippi. So that was pretty fun.
That's really fun.
It was. Okay, so for this next category, this next section, I'm going to give you 3 facts and you have to guess which one is true. 1, ocean rescue missions have a success rate of between 80 and 96%, depending on factors such as equipment, weather, different circumstances like that. Number 2, the Coast Guard used or you they don't I don't think they do it now, but they used to use pigeons to help spot orange life vests at sea. Or 3, the longest someone has been rescued by sea out at sea was 504 days.
Hmm. Well, from my research with Cherami for last week's episode, I know that pigeons are really smart.
That they are.
And I could believe the 80 to 96% success rate for the rescues. I can also believe 504 days. But also, that's almost 2 years. That's a long time.
It is all
Oh,
the lie. There's 2 truths and
oh
1
yeah.
lie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say the 504 days. That just seems a little too long.
You are correct, but it's actually not that far off from the fact. The longest someone has been rescued out at sea was actually 484 days.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Oh my
And it
gosh.
was a Japanese captain named Uguri Jukichi and one of his sailors whose name was Otokichi, and they were lost off the coast of Japan in the year 1813 and were found off the coast of California in 1815. So,
Holy crap.
yeah.
That's like 1.3 years. Not like 1.3 years. That is 1.3 years.
Yeah, over a year out at sea. I don't know. I want to kind of like look in more into the story, but like, how would you like? That's a long time to survive out at sea. I don't know if they sometimes went on an island and then drifted more if it was like completely out at sea, but yeah, the longest recorded. Yeah, crazy. I want to do a segment of a fun fact. So, the U.S. Navy Marine Mammal Program has trained dolphins, sea lions, and seals to help locate lost equipment, lost divers, and have been used for mine detection.
That's
So,
fancy.
yeah, I mean, all those animals are pretty smart, and good swimmers. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Those are really smart
just
animals. That's really cool.
yeah. So I thought that was really cool.
You should look into that a little bit more because I would be interested to learn how they've done that. If they like take them into captivity and train them, or if they train them in the wild. I don't know how they would train them in
Yeah,
the wild.
yeah. So I have a story for next week that's not dolphin related, but I think my next story I'm going to go into marine animals used
Ooh.
for rescue and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it'll be like
Awesome.
a little thing to be excited about for future episodes.
Yeah. I'm pumped. That'll be so
All
fun.
right.
Well, anything else before we go?
I don't think so. Anything else from you?
Just in the meantime, while you're waiting for our next episode, go ahead and give us a follow and rate us on wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we will see you guys next week.
Yes, and thank you so much for listening.
Yep.